Hi, I'm Paulette Morrissey from Tulip Square, and this week I'm going to show you how to make this runner called X Marks the Spot. This is one of our popular patterns, and it's one that we've had several requests if we would make a video of it. So I'm going to go ahead and make a video today. And I wanted to mention that in the picture in the pattern, it's mostly white with two other accent colors. When I'm making it today, I'm going to make it two colors with a little bit of accent white, just to show you how different the same pattern can look just by changing your fabrics. So we're going to head over to the sewing machine and get started on this, and it is a cute pattern. Let's go. Okay, to make this pattern, there's a good number of pieces, and they're all in the pattern, which will be a link at the end of the video if you want to download that. So I'm starting with the 2.5-inch squares, and I'm going to make 9 pairs and sew them up just together along one side. 1/4-inch seams. Make sure you got nice 1/4-inch seams. So I'm going to sew 9 pairs together. Okay, I've got these all sewn and pressed, and now I'm going to sew green squares to this one side of 6 of them, and then I'm going to sew another white square to the opposite side of the remaining 3 of them. So I'll have 6 like this and 3 like this. You've got 6 pieces like this and 3 pieces like this. So you're going to sew them together like so. You have 3 blocks like that. And when I press them all towards the same color. In this case, I pressed them all towards the green, so that when I sew them together, they nestle nicely and the seams line up nicely. Now you have 3 blocks like this. And if you happen to be following along in the pattern, you'll notice that my whites and my greens are reversed from what they would be in the pattern, and that's because I'm just making this a little bit different, so you can see a completely different look. Instead of a runner that's predominantly white, this one's going to be predominantly green with some white other parts in it. So when you're making your own, you would pick your own colors anyway, so I'm just showing you a different option. So next I'm going to pair up these bigger squares, both colors. I'm going to draw a diagonal line on the back of the white or 2 of the colors. I'm going to draw that right now. Get out my ruler. Draw a nice diagonal line, nice and accurate. Like so. And I'm going to sew a 1/4-inch seam on each side of that line. And I'm going to do that with all of these pairs. One little thing I wanted to point out when you're doing pieces like this, that you have to line up the 2, and maybe most of you already know this, but I'm going to show you anyway. When you take the 2 pieces, if you tap them together just like as if you were doing that with a stack of paper, and then you do them the other way, they line up beautifully. It's a lot quicker than trying to fiddle around with the 2 pieces of fabric. So just take the 2, put them somewhere near each other, doesn't matter, and then you just tap them one way and then turn it and tap them the other way, and they're lined up perfect. Now once you've sewn on both sides of the line you drew, you're going to cut on the line you drew. Giving yourself a nice 1/4-inch seam allowance on each piece, and then you're going to go press these open. I like to press towards the darker side. So I'll press these all towards the green, and I'll be right back. And now we've got all of our little half square triangle pieces, and we're going to set those aside. And next, we're going to make some flying geese. And if you don't know what flying geese are, they are where you have a rectangle, like so, and you're going to sew 2 pieces. You're going to sew 1 in each corner. You're going to sew across here, and then it gets cut so it's like that, and you're going to sew another one over here. So we're going to start by sewing a diagonal line from here to here. Now a couple things I want to tell you. First of all, you can draw a line on here and follow the line and sew that way, or what I like to do is I've got a little tape on my sewing machine that lines up with a center line. So what I do is I line up this point with the bottom. It has to be on this edge of this little line. I line up the bottom there, and the top of it is lined up with my needle, and then I just keep my point on that line as I sew, and when I'm done, I end up with a perfect line like that. So that's if you don't feel like drawing all those lines on them. Secondly, I want to point out when you're doing things where you're sewing from a point to a point, if you start on the point along a fabric edge as opposed to starting on this point, this way it tends to get chewed up in your machine a lot less than if you sew from here. These two little points like to get just chomped up in my machine, so I always sew from the side that has a piece of fabric with it. So I'm going to go and sew a square on one corner of each of these. Now once you've got that diagonal seam sewn on each one of them, you're going to cut on the right side of that seam, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to cut that off, and then you're going to press this towards the corner. We'll do that on all of them. Now I've got all these sewn, and I'm going to put the second half on each one, and sew like so. And then same thing, cut off the edge and press it open. Now we have all our flying geese done. They look like this. Okay, so now I'm going to take one of my flying geese pieces and one of my half square triangles, and I'm going to sew a half square triangle to each end of 6 of the flying geese pieces. So you've got this, so this color goes like this. Now you have all these pieces done, and you're going to take the rest of these flying geese and you're going to sew them to opposite sides of each of your checkerboard squares. And they get sewn with the big arrow pointing towards the checkerboard, like so. Now you have 3 pieces like this. Now what you're going to do is take these other pieces that you just sewed, and you're going to sew one on the top of each one, and one to the bottom of each one. So you got a nice looking block like that. And make sure you line up all your seams when you're doing this so it looks good. Okay, so now you've got 3 blocks like this. And what you're going to do next is you're going to sew them in a row in a long strip, and you're going to sew them separated by sashing strips. So we're going to have a sashing strip, a block, a sashing strip, a block, a sashing strip, and a block, and a final sashing strip. So you're going to have 4 sashing strips and 3 blocks in a row. So go ahead and sew those together next. Now you've got one long strip like this. Sashing, block, sashing, block, sashing, block, and sashing. Now all you have to do is take your longer pieces of sashing or border strip and sew them to these 2 long edges. And now the final edge is on, and it is done. Pretty cute, isn't it? Kind of hard to show you the whole thing. I'll hold it up in a second. This runner, when it's finished, is 14 by 44 inches. It's a nice good size for most tables. It was pretty easy to make. It took me a little bit more than an hour to put the whole thing together. And I just wanted to mention that if you're new to half square triangles or flying geese or anything like that with diagonal stitching, this is a good pattern. It's easy enough. It's got a nice finished look when it's done. And it's a good intro to doing things like that if you've never done it before. Those are all easy things to do, and once you do them step by step, they're pretty easy. And if you would like to get this pattern, there is a link for the download up here somewhere. And so if you like this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notify little bell if you'd like to be notified when we put up a new video, which is every Saturday. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next week with a brand new one. Bye-bye.